You're listening to the Mind Your Business podcast, episode number 51. Today, we're answering another listener question of the week, where we're going to help you figure out what is the right platform for you and your business. So, stay tuned. Hi, I'm James Wedmore, and I've built a 7-figure internet business that offers the financial freedom to do what I want, when I want. And I'm the first to say that hard work and hustle are not essential ingredients for your success. So, how do you build a thriving business from the inside out? This is the Mind Your Business podcast, featuring myself and co-host Phoebe Mroczek. Well, hello, listeners. James Wedmore here.
And I'm Phoebe Mroczek.
And welcome to the call. This is the Mind Your Business podcast, where we discuss topics of the mind, heart, and soul when it comes to the journey, the never-ending journey of entrepreneurship. So, this is another one of our listener questions of the week, which we're excited to get into in a moment, because this is actually one of our customers. In fact, this is actually somebody who just attended a live 2-day workshop that I held in Laguna Beach. So you met her as well, right, Phoebe? You met Tina.
I did, and it was so awesome to get to meet people actually in real life that listen to the podcast. There were a couple times I was telling stories and they'd finish my stories. I'm like, how did you know that? They're like, oh, I've listened to that episode 3 times. And it was just so nice. I loved it to actually meet and get feedback and, what's your favorite episode and why is it your favorite episode and what were we doing? And it was an awesome experience for me.
I have to say, for anybody who's, ironically, since this is going to tie into the relevance of the question, that I'm so glad we started a podcast, and it was such a great decision, because just having all these members come out, we had people flying in from as far as Australia, Norway, Ireland, and the UK, let alone Canada and the East Coast of the US, for a small 2-day workshop. Okay. And everyone I talked to said something about the podcast. Every single person in that room said something about the podcast. And we actually had one of our guests from the podcast in the room, right? Chris Vondermaven. And I said, who here has listened to the Chris Vondermaven episode on the podcast? Every hand went up. Maybe there was one that didn't or something, like someone hiding in the back of the room. But every hand went up. And people were talking about even just like the episode from last Tuesday. And I'm just like, this is so amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so we're going to get into that today. We're actually going to talk about your platform. But I just want to say, for those of you who attended and you're listening, I'm so thankful to everybody who flew all the way out, who took the time, the effort, the money, the commitment to be there. It was such a great experience. I don't know, Phoebe, what did you think? You were there.
I was there. And the workshop itself was awesome. I think for me, going into the cocktail party, so we hosted a cocktail party the Tuesday night before the actual workshop, and just to meet everyone, and people were just so engaging and so engaged in the podcast. And like you said, people are telling me they just can't wait to scroll down and see which one's on Monday and which one's on Thursday. And it was so cool. I loved it. And I don't really get that feedback loop. When we look at the podcast, we don't see that direct sale come in or something like that. And so for us, I was telling people this week that for us, what we kind of, our highs really comes from the iTunes reviews. But then when we actually get to meet people in real life who are excited to meet us and excited to talk to us about different things that we talk about on the podcast, was just one of the most rewarding experiences. And I was so grateful to be able to attend and also speak to all the attendees about, different episodes that they wanted to hear from us. So I loved it. I am so grateful. And thank you to everyone who did come out and who approached me about different topics and kind of gave me some feedback. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so that's actually was Phoebe's idea, was to ask people in the audience, hey, come reach out to us with your questions now, and we can turn that into an episode. And so we're going to be doing that today. I just thought that was such a great idea. But I'll have to say, before we get into the question, because the question has to do with choosing the right platform for you and whatnot, is that there's something in our industry. It's always kind of like, from a business standpoint, doing events is like the last thing you want to do, because it's a lot of work. And we actually ran into a problem, which I'd like to share for a little bit, to just kind of put it out there, is that, events take a lot of work. Okay. A lot. And we had something happen the morning of the cocktail party, which was a Tuesday. where I walked down first thing in the morning to the venue that we were holding. It was actually at the clubhouse of our private community that we live in. It was just going to be real simple and small. And the first thing when I go to pick up the keys to set up, first of all, there's two things. I didn't tell you this, Phoebe, but I go in the room and there's just like trash and boxes and stuff all over the place. They're like, do you need us to get this out of the way? And I'm like, yeah, it would, probably be good. I guess.
It's really helpful.
I mean, it was like a mountain of like boxes and crates and all this stuff just sitting in the side in the corner of the room. I'm like, aren't we paying for this? And then they said, oh, by the way, we're going to need the room the second day. So we have to put you outside. And I'm like, wait, what? We were pretty upset. You would have gotten to see me angry. And all that stuff we've been talking about on all these episodes just go right out the window. Like I'm in total breakdown. I was upset. Chelsea, my wife, who handled it much more gracefully than I could have, was upset as well. What fueled that was knowing that there's this commitment to your audience. And I thought that was the most exciting thing for me, all said and done, is that there was this anger that was fueled by the fact I was like, no, I have people flying all over the country to be here. You're not going to tell me that we're going to go and do half the event outside on a patio in the hot sun in the middle of August. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. What's so great is when things like that happen. For me, I don't know about anybody else's personality type, but when I get pushed into a corner like that, where we're in the middle of a problem, I know how to solve immediately. And this was it's a walk. It's like a 2-block walk from this clubhouse to our home. By the time I was home from the walk there, 2 blocks, we'd already booked another venue, or she was sending the contracts for us to book. And this new venue was so much better on a whole nother scale. Yeah, we had to pay more, but it just took the event, elevated the event to a level that we weren't even anticipating. And that was just so cool, so great. And it's just, I'm still on a high. I haven't rested since that event. I am a little tired. I really am on an adrenaline high from just everything that happened there. So,
you were saying it's a testament to your, enthusiasm and your commitment to all of your members. And I think, when I had arrived and you weren't in the office and, you and I spoke on the phone and you were telling me what was going on. And it was just this, it was that commitment to booking the new venue. Obviously you could have booked anywhere. You could have just booked like a crappy hotel room somewhere, but the commitment was there to really make this an amazing experience. And, the Surf and Sand or whatever the hotel's name was that we went to was like, it's the best in Laguna Beach. And so that just elevated the energy in the room because people were coming with this like awe and this enthusiasm and excitement for like, oh, the venue's changed, but look at what we have now. This is amazing. And you could see the water. It was a beautiful venue. And just, I feel like that momentum really carried on throughout the week. So, I guess applause to you and, Jilly and Chelsea for putting that on. And I know you had a couple other people that helped out with that. So yeah, it was awesome.
It's just one of those things where like, it always works out for the best. You can call it ego or whatever, but I was like, I'm not going to work with these people anyway. If this is how they treat me before we begin, if these are the type of mistakes they make, who knows what's actually going to happen during this. So yeah, it worked out for the best. I think that's great. So anyways, this is all partially relevant because we're going to talk to Tina Doshi and her great question that she has that really has to do with platforms. And, one of the things I will touch upon is like the podcast as a platform and, the experience we had of everyone talking about the podcast and their experience with the podcast here. But then also the fact that the live event kind of serves as a platform as well. So we have a lot of really interesting stuff to go over today. So Phoebe, why don't you get into Tina's question?
Hi, James and Phoebe. This is Tina Doshi. It was so great meeting you in person at the Business by Design workshop over the weekend. One question that I have for you, though, is that I'm really building a business from the beginning, although this is not my first business. I know James talks about having a fast track and a slow track. I know I'll be using Facebook ads as part of my strategy, but I'm not sure about the right medium for my ongoing audience and myself. How do you figure out what the right platform is for you? There are so many options between blogging, guest posting, doing videos, doing webinars, posting on social media, podcasts, and live streaming. It's hard because sometimes I feel like I need to be doing it all. How do you choose the right one for you based on your personality or for your audience?
Yes. So great question. Thank you, Tina. And again, thank you for being there. Truly appreciated having you. So yeah, there's a few things here I want to say. The first thing is, which I love, is I'm starting my business from the beginning. And, that's kind of where we all start our business is at the beginning. And we don't want to lose sight of that. And we lose sight of that when we start comparing ourselves to others. And that's not very good to do. So we're all starting our business from the beginning, So it's a great place to start, always at the beginning. Now, the second thing is, yes, you hit the nail right on the head, is that there are a ton of options and that there's this feeling that you need to be doing it all. And this is what we want to address more than anything. Before we get into what is the right platform for you, the real answer is to only do one at first. You can always expand. So I want to take a look first at what exactly does it mean to have a platform. So first of all, when you mentioned guest blogging, that's not a platform. Okay. So let's take a look first at what do we mean when we say platform. So if you're a personal brand, you need a platform. You need a place where you can share your content for free and create a two-way communication channel or conversation, right, with your subscribers, your listeners, your viewer, or your audience, your tribe. And it needs to be in a place where you also have to determine, well, what is the modality of the content? So we really have three types of modalities of content. We have text, as in like articles and blog posts. We have audio, such as podcasts. And we have video, which combines all of those things, right? And you're going to want to look at those things. Where's a place where I can choose the right medium and create that two-way communication that I own it, or I'm in control of it at least, And so there are a lot of options. And so that's what we're looking for, is like, what is the right medium and what's the right place to communicate that? Okay. So that's the first thing we want to look at. But the answer, the thing I'm going to tell you first and foremost, you do not want to be doing them all. Okay. Stop trying to do that. You really just want to pick one place where you're going to create your content. So before we get into it, I actually want to address how my platform has shifted as of late, where for years I've been doing everything on YouTube. And the reason I did everything on YouTube is simple. I love video. I have a video background and I teach video. So I got to practice what I preach. And a lot of the stuff was creating and talking about, I still use YouTube, but a lot of the stuff I'm talking about over there is very visual stuff. It demands video. So you want to look to what the content you're talking about, what does it demand from you in order to communicate it as effectively as possible? So you couldn't really imagine writing an article about how to tie your shoes. It wouldn't really be a great read. Okay, first, step one. Even in a podcast about, here's a more effective way of tying your laces. That would just be awful. But a video showing someone how to tie their shoes is going to be a very helpful video. Now, I'm using simplistic examples here for a reason, but there are niches that demand more visual, right? So I know Tina does stuff with photography. So I absolutely feel like any photography related tutorial needs to be demonstrated through video. Showing how to use a camera. I'm not going to read an article or listen to a podcast on how to use a camera. Plain and simple, right? But now, as you can see, we're on a podcast. So I've transitioned a lot. The answer is simple as to why I did that. I get that question all the time, and it's really simple. I want to talk to you about deeper topics. I want to talk to you about things like, mindset and fear and confidence and what it really takes, and, go out on the edge, stuff that if we would sit around, it would be like at a bonfire late at night and, like having a beer, kind of contemplating life and stuff, right? And you can't really do that in a 40-minute video on YouTube. Like me just staring at the camera talking to you for 40 minutes is tough. But in a podcast, you're probably going for a walk, you're in your car, you're doing the dishes, or you're cleaning your office. And it's nice. You're listening while you're doing something else. And these are great examples to demonstrate how whatever the topic is that we're talking about will help to determine which medium is required. So things like DIY tutorials and fitness and photography lend themselves really well to things like YouTube or Facebook video. But entrepreneurial mindset topics, interviews, those are going to be a lot better on a podcast. And then there's obviously all the gambit in between there. So does that make sense, Phoebe? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think you can also, some straddle certain elements of it. For example, like photography, you could do, it's a very visual industry. So I feel like you could do a lot of, you use Instagram or whatever anything with photography on there, visual platforms, but you could also use video. So don't think that you're just stuck with one. I know we're talking about the different platforms and how you need to choose one, but just remember that by choosing one, you can still use or incorporate different elements. You can still incorporate text into your videos, but when we're looking at like the podcast, that was just it was a no-brainer decision. We would never really create videos, even though we're going to repurpose some of them and turn them into videos. But I think that's an important thing, just so you know that you're not stuck with one.
Well, and one thing I want to point out is that when you determine the medium in which you want to share your content, and you determine where that content or the medium of that content is going to be shared, then you realize that all these other quote unquote things that people call platforms are simply tools to help you promote the content. So when it comes to building an audience on Instagram, I would never recommend that someone's entire business is built on Instagram. How I would look at it, and it's the way I use it, is that I have a podcast and I'm sharing stuff from the podcast on Instagram and inviting people to go to my podcast. There's quotes from the podcast, there's updates about the new episode, there's updates about when we're going to have a new episode and special guests we're having. It's more of a it's almost like a quick newsletter of what's coming, what's been happening, all that stuff. Hey, come check out the podcast. Not like I'm going to build my entire business on Instagram and that's the only way that I distribute content and share content. Now, that's my opinion. Okay, that's me. And so I look to all these other things like Snapchat, Instagram, and then I would use YouTube and, Facebook, or my Facebook fan page, and even a Facebook group, which is something we've talked about with the podcast, is having a Facebook group for the podcast, as things that support that platform. That really the platform is about the message, the content that you're creating, and how you can promote it and create conversation around it. So when I used YouTube a lot, when I put a new video on YouTube, I'm emailing, I'm Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. I'm doing everything everywhere else to get people to that YouTube video. So one way I would look at this is, how could you create a regular content schedule? Like come up with a list of 10, 20, 30 topic ideas. And once you have the idea, say, well, what would be best? A podcast or a video or an article, and do it that way. Okay. So the couple questions you want to just look at and kind of sums up what we've been talking about here is, I think the first thing is, where's your audience already hanging out? You don't really want to convince them they need to be doing something they don't want to do, right? If they're already on Facebook, a Facebook group is a great platform to create. And it's a great communication portal. Okay. If you're an entrepreneur or you're targeting entrepreneurs, they love podcasts. So get on the podcast scene. Okay. And then you want to look to where's a platform where you can not just talk, but also listen. It's really important that there is a place for comments and feedback. Now, podcasts, not as much. That's why we want listener questions. Yes, we get reviews, but it's not as much of a two-way conversation. That's why we kind of we're thinking about bringing a group in, a Facebook group into this. And then the third question is you want to look at your topics. If you made out a content schedule for the next, one a week for the next 6 months or 90 days, are these visual topics? Are these things that need to be demonstrated with a video or images? Or can you just talk about them in an audio? If it's just you talking into a camera for 30 minutes, do you really need to do it in a video? That's where I always got stuck. I'm making 5-minute videos that are super visual and super engaging. Look at me. Let me talk really fast. And I didn't get to go deeper with this. And, even ironically, even though my content on the podcast is so much longer, we're talking about 40 to 60 minutes versus a 5-minute video, I'm still creating so much content quicker with the podcast. Okay. So stuff to think about there before you choose. And then when you look at all the other things, whether it's Pinterest, your blog, Facebook fan page, Facebook groups, Facebook ads, YouTube, your email list, Snapchat, Instagram, webinars, it can all really funnel back to the content. That's what I would really, really recommend there. And I know, yes, there's even live streaming on Facebook.
So something that I would do is I love to write. And so I'm going back to the part in Tina's question when she says, how do you choose the right one for you based on your personality or for your audience? So I know that we're saying, where is your audience? Go to where they are. I also would offer up here that, what do you really enjoy doing? So I love to write. And so what I would do is write to my email list, and then I would write on Facebook, and I would write in my Facebook group. And then from there, I would turn the things that I loved about what I was writing. So I could I could pull out little quotes and then turn that into an Instagram graphic or turn that into a Facebook graphic. I could, put that up on Snapchat if I wanted to show you what I was writing or a little snippet of what I was writing, something like that. So I think there is a delicate balance between, what do you love to do and where is your audience? And so making sure that those two, finding that intersection there is going to obviously keep you much more consistent, because if you love it, you're going to continue doing it. But also your audience, I think, is going to feel that energy from you and make sure that, they're going to feel much more engaged and much more plugged into the message that you're delivering to them as well. Absolutely. There has to be that blend, that dance between what is going to serve your audience best, what is going to communicate the message best, and what is the best way where you communicate. For me, I can do a video just as well as a podcast, but it's different types of content. I'm going to show you something very visual, like how to set up your film studio. I don't think I could talk about that on a podcast. That would be very confusing. Like, okay, so you're going to stand 4 feet from the camera, and then on your left, there's going to be a light. It'd be like, wait, what? I don't get it. Where that's very visual. So I think all that stuff has to come together for you to make your own decision. But if there is one thing you take away, one thing, it's that stop trying to do it all. Stop trying to say or assume that you have to be on all things. This is like social media FOMO, right? Where if you're not popular on one platform, you're missing out on all this business. And then, people are posting, Facebook ads and messages saying like, oh, if you're not on Snapchat, your business is going to die. And it's not true. It's really not true. So, those are people that are creating the Snapchat courses. Exactly. As well. Exactly. Right. So they have to, exactly. So anyway, so Tina, I hope that helps. And I hope that helps our listeners as well. For those of you who are starting your business at the beginning, who feel overwhelmed by all the platforms. Now, I also know people that have never built a platform. One of my coaching clients just did webinars for the first 6 to 8 months and then finally came out with a podcast, but built up almost a 7-figure business just with webinars, right? So, don't let this detract from the business model and the way in which you generate sales and revenue. But ultimately, it should be a great list builder and a community builder. So I hope this helps everyone. I hope it gives clarity. And I want to take a moment and just thank Tina for the awesome question and for coming to our event live in Laguna Beach, California. So I just want to make sure that we offer up to you, if you have any questions and would like to be featured on the podcast, please submit your questions at mindyourbusinesspodcast.com. And if you haven't left a review yet, please be sure to do that, because that, as I said earlier, is really where we get our feedback and our inspiration from. So you can find that at jameswedmore.com/iTunes. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Are you frustrated that no matter how hard you hustle, no matter how much you get done in a day, you still feel like you have little results to show for it? Do you feel like you're doing everything right, but there's still something missing? Well, what if there was an easier way? What if your business could be fun, effortless, and profitable? Phoebe and I have put together a free audio MP3 for you, compiling the 77 business affirmations for creating success from the inside out. And we want to give it to you absolutely free. This is your chance to rewire your brain for bigger results in your life and your business. To get instant access absolutely free, simply visit 77affirmations.com. That's the number 77affirmations.com.